Episode 1, Night Flight. The episode starts with a mysterious hooded girl on the rooftop who just suddenly jumps off the roof. I mean, talk about a grand entrance. The story follows 14-year-old Ko Yamori, your typical middle school student sneaking out of the apartment in the middle of the night. It makes you wonder why and where a prepubescent boy would wander at night. Wondering what to do with his newfound freedom, he makes his way to a park alone. Anyways, while playing on the swing, he is reminded of what happened at school. In a flashback scene, Yamori receives a love letter in his shoebox compartment. When confronted by the girl, he apologizes to her, saying he doesn't understand dating. Honestly, from where I'm standing, that sounds like a rejection, so... The girl's friends confront Yamori, to which he could only apologize and say he wasn't sure about his feelings or if he even liked girls. He was so deep in his thoughts that he was thrown off the swing. He should really learn to multitask. While trying to figure things out, his phone suddenly rings. He thought he was caught sneaking out by his parents or something, but it turns out to be a text message beer ad or something. He continues on his adventure, walking the lonely streets of the city like an edgelord when he comes across a vending machine that suddenly flashes some really bright lights. Why? I don't know, maybe he's trying to give him a seizure or something. It was as if it was calling to him. In a trance-like state, he slowly buys a beer, and this girl shows up and catches him red-handed. Oh no, underage drinking. He explains he was just told to buy it, but the girl doesn't sound too convinced, and honestly, I'm with her because just because the advertisement says you should buy it doesn't mean you actually have to buy it. But it's fine because she says she won't report it to the police. This girl starts following Yamori, asking why he's wandering alone at night, especially as a 14-year-old boy. She speculates that most people stay up late at night because there's a show they'd like to watch or something they want to do, which, yeah, fair enough. She later said that people stay up late because they're unsatisfied with how the day ended. Typically, people are bound by social norms and laws or whatever, so they adjust to what they believe is normal in this situation. Feeling a little sleepy, the girl invites Yamori over to her place. Nice. She reassures him that she will be able to help him to get to sleep. When they get there, the girl suddenly takes off her coat, which Yamori misunderstood as something else because he's a 14-year-old boy.
Okay.
Determined to get some sleep, Yamori agrees to try it.
Boy!
He's unable to sleep, especially with a pretty girl watching him, so he pretends to be asleep. When the girl thinks Yamori's already asleep, she slowly moves in and takes a bite at Yamori's neck. And so it turns out that the girl's a vampire. Vampire anime! But it's fine, it's fine. We accept it for the plot. Yamori wakes up, only to discover that the girl is indeed a vampire, and he's worried that he might have turned into one. Nah, have you guys ever seen any vampire flicks or shows? I mean, just because you were bit by a vampire doesn't automatically turn you into one. The girl explains that for one to become a vampire, a human must fall in love with them, which is not the case here for fairly obvious reasons. Still, trying to make sense of all of this, Yamori asks the girl some questions, who later introduces herself as Nazuna Nanakusa. She explains that she has no plans to make vampires and is simply just feeding. That's nice. I mean, pretty much any other vampire flick, they're just like, we must expand the vampire nation. But it's fine, you know, it's a breath of fresh air. Yamori later asks Nazuna to fall in love with her so that she can turn him into a vampire. He seems very determined about this, so it's fine. I mean, like, she's probably pretty into it too. She later takes Yamori to the rooftop, explaining that blood is best when Dranken? I'm sorry. When consumed at night. She suddenly kicks Yamori off the rooftop, so okay. That would explain it. As he free falls, Nazuna goes after him, where she grabs him and flies off into the night. See, it's always the dude that's a vampire in this situation, but am I the only one who's actually happy that it's the girl in this situation, or is that just like a me thing? Sorry, anyway. Episode 2. Do you do line? Do you do line? Do you do line? Okay, this is a really weird episode title, but like, after deciding to become a creature of the night, Yamori sneaks out of his apartment again because apparently his parents are that inattentive. He meets with Nazuna, intent on knowing more about vampires. He gets absolutely sidetracked with his questions, and Nazuna has to remind him of his objective. to become a vampire. Wow, talk about one-sided romance. She got thrown off when Yamori suddenly offers his blood out of the blue. Talk about brave, or in this case, maybe horny. The next night, he sneaks out and looks for Nazuna again? And he still seems to struggle finding her, which I don't blame her because she seems to just wander around at night. When he's about to give up, she appears out of nowhere. I think the timing is also a kind of skill in a sense because it's like a dramatic entrance. Maybe it's like a vampire thing. I don't know. She explains that she's been looking for more people to just suck their blood because that's a normal activity to do every night. Never mind. Yamori decides to actually be intelligent once in his life and actually asks for her contact information, to which she responds by asking if he uses the Line app. When Yamori said he didn't, Nazuna felt relieved when she revealed that she just didn't have a cell phone and didn't actually need one. Which, why did she ask about the Line app again? It doesn't make any sense. Suddenly, Nazuna remembers that she has a cell phone, so she invites him back to her place again, where she finds one of those old blocky Nokias, but it seems like Nazuna needs a bit of an education about what regular advanced technology looks like in the 21st century, but like it's whatever, it's fine. After an intense conversation about cell phones, Nazuna feels tired and decides to sleep. Honestly, I don't blame her. I can't get a new phone because I get bored reading the specs. She claims she was tired of flying all around town looking for random strangers. She later invites Yamori to her futon to rest so that she can suck his blood. Yay! While lying in bed, Yamori starts pouting because I assume he feels jealous when she was already out looking for someone else. Nazuna must be feeling some of that teenage angst from Yamori over there, so she reveals that she was looking all over for him but was really embarrassed to admit it. After hearing that, Yamori offers his neck to where she is much, welcome to take a little suck. So Yamori needs some higher standards and Nazuna needs to have more open communication. The following night, Yamori meets up with Nazuna. Again, like always. Does this kid just not have school? Jesus! And just like always, they both struggle to find each other and they... Okay, the thing about this, what happened to the phone? It's the third night already! After finally finding her somewhere in the city, Yamori shows her a wristwatch transceiver that he brought earlier so they could get in touch, which is one hell of a workaround considering you could just get her a phone plan if you are feeling so generous. Nazuna wants to play with it, and Yamori reveals that he had one when he was younger, and oh look, here's a flashback. When Yamori was a lot younger, he saw the wristwatch transceivers in a shop, and he really wanted to buy a pair so he could play with them. Nazuna was shocked to hear that he wanted to play with it, but she was actually way more surprised to find out that he even had friends to play with. He claims that he figured out a way to play without even having friends. See, Yamori's brilliant idea is that he would just put it on a shelf and hope that someone came to pick it up. But, obviously nothing much really came of it, and he tried to check up on it, but it was gone. Which means that someone picked it up. He starts contemplating whether or not he should call the transceiver, but ultimately decides to wait. To this day, he has not heard a single thing from it. All that build-up for nothing. God damn it! Nazuna laughs at his story, and at this point I'm feeling pretty awful for him, but it's alright. Yamori gives Nazuna the transceiver, and they decide to test to see if it works. Despite the distance, it worked pretty well for a test run. They meet up later that night when Nazuna carries Yamori as they fly over the city under the night sky. They end up at Yamori's school, to which Nazuna comments that the night has a way of changing how people look at things. I am a night person myself, so I very much agree with it, especially Tokyo at night. That shit's gorgeous. When the moon starts to brighten up, Nazuna suddenly approached him and sucked his blood out of the blue. No warning, no nothing, no asking. Your blood is mine now. Yoink! Yamori starts thinking that it's weird that someone super laid back like Nazuna, who just makes a lot of jokes, would suddenly feel embarrassed when they start talking about love or romance because she is not used to emotional intimacy. Every time there's a mention of love, she just starts acting really weird. Yamori suggests that they get to know each other better and become friends. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't actually have a lot of friends, if any at all. And with the sun peeking over the horizon, Yamori heads back to his apartment. He starts wondering what happened to the other transceiver or if the person who took it still has it. But out of the blue, his transceiver beeped, hinting that the other was close. When he looked behind him, he saw a familiar face. It's a character we've never seen before, but there's some emotional weight to it, so we just kind of, I have to accept it and go with it. Yeah! Episode 3. A lot came out. A lot of what? I don't know. I'll leave that for you to decide.
This is cancer.
The episode starts with Yamori and Nazuna having a small talk.
Bruh.
Nazuna asks him if he really doesn't have any friends at all. Yamori responds by saying he is unsure when one becomes friends. But all kidding aside, he says he doesn't know what friends are or how to become a friend. He claims that he did have friends growing up, but he hasn't seen them in years. He admits when he bought himself the transceiver, he hoped to have a friend or just someone to talk to. Back in the present, Yamori bumps into Akira when he returns to the apartment. Akira reveals that she never threw out the transceiver since he gave it to her. Oh, well, it sounds like she's into him already. She explains that since they were in different classes, he made more friends in the other class, and that meant that they didn't really keep in touch as much. She hoped the transceiver would change that, so she waited for him to signal, which he never did. When she heard that he hadn't been going to school recently, she decided to drop by his house with a transceiver, hoping to talk to him about it. Yamori is super mega confused as he very clearly remembers leaving the transceiver in a mailbox and not giving it to Akira, and she corrects him by saying that he left it on top of their mailbox, to which she assumed it was left for her. Also, I said it was a shelf, sorry, it was a mailbox. She felt relieved after finding out he was fine. She was just worried about him since he was a friend, and although Yamori may have thought he was standoffish and aloof, she was happy despite all of that. He was able to make her think that he considers her a friend in some somewhat twisted way. Realizing that Akira considers him a friend, Yamori casually greets them like an old friend, but he wonders why she is in her school uniform. She says she's off to school, but Yamori is confused as hell because it's 4 a.m. in the morning. She explains that she typically wakes up early and uses the time to walk around town before going to school, which is hugely unsafe, but that's another talk. Before leaving, she asks Yamori if he would like to meet again tomorrow around the same time, to which he agrees even though it's 4 a.m. The next night, Yamori heads home early after visiting Nazuna at her place, and she's obviously a little bothered by this and starts prying into his business. She explains that since they have a physical relationship, which Yamori vehemently denies, he was not supposed to sneak around meeting other women. And Yamori is obviously really embarrassed, so he just runs away from the conversation, and he later meets with Akira at the park, where he asks if she enjoys hanging out with him, considering all they do is just small talk.
LOL.
He wonders why she bothers with him to the point where he thinks she actually likes him. Wow, who could have seen that coming? While trying to make small talk, Yamori realizes that Nazuna is just watching them behind a tree. Oh, he's so dead. Nazuna assumes they're doing something inappropriate because they're meeting at 4 a.m. in the morning. And when Akira asks Yamori if he knows her, she explains that she does not need to worry as what they have is only platonic, or physical in her exact words. Akira obviously assumes the worst about them, and determined to clear the misunderstanding, Nazuna grabs Yamori and sucks his blood right in front of her. Well, that was bold, and probably also really, really traumatic for poor Akira. Trying to understand their situation, they later go to a cafe to pick up where they left off. Still in shock, Akira asks Yamori why he lets a vampire suck his blood. When completely unable to answer, she asks him to return to school with her. Nazuna looks so bothered with how she's talking to Yamori that she butts in and asks her where she's been all this time and why she'd not contacted him before. And Boy, does Nazuna look jealous here. Then in typical dramatic anime fashion, Nazuna storms out of the cafe and Yamori runs after her. And now she thinks she's angry at Akira, but he has no idea why. He searches everywhere for her, but couldn't find her at all. So left with no choice, he used the transceiver and apologized to her for secretly meeting a friend, I guess. She then says that she was never really angry, but it just kind of annoyed her that Yamori never responded to her when she asked him to return to school. He explains that he struggled to give her an answer because he really wants to become a vampire. When Nazuna noticed Yamori was bleeding when he tripped up the stairs, she pulled him close and kisses him, and the plot thickens. The episode starts with Akira in school. Her classmates get scolded by their teacher for not sleeping properly, and the teacher then starts to lecture them about how adequate sleep is very important for young people. Later that night, when Akira is already on her bed and asleep, Ko gets out of the house. He congratulates himself for being able to leave quietly, and then asks himself where Nazuna would be. He then remembers the kiss between him and Nazuna, and like the prepubescent boy he is, he just panics. Ko finds her in a playground and notes how easy it was for her to find her now, like she actually wanted to be found, wink wonk. He then just leaves and starts overthinking about the kiss, cause honestly I would too. He sees a group of men looking at a couple in the overpass, waiting until the two finally kiss. He then realizes that couples in love kiss, and he starts to get really excited, thinking that he's finally fallen in love with Nazuna and gets to be a vampire. Then Nazuna arrives, and Ko tells her that he's ready to become a vampire. Then she bites him and says he's tasty, as in his blood is tasty. And Ko gets confused because he's still human, and she says it's because what he felt was in love. Ko gets annoyed at how chill Nazuna is because their kiss was his first. She tells him that it was also her first. But she also says it's a normal thing to do for friends, apparently. Meanwhile, Akira also has some bad sleeping habits and wakes up at midnight. She decides to dress up and go to school at midnight. Akira and Ko meet up on the street, and she tells her what her teacher told him in class about a healthy sleep schedule. Ko then invites her to come with him and hang out with Nazuna, because that's a really great idea after the last time. They arrive at her apartment when Nazuna and Ko play video games. Nazuna then invites Akira to play some games and offers a kiss as her reward. Akira hesitates, saying that she doesn't really want a kiss, and she then finds out how Nazuna casually offers kisses to Ko and tells him she can't be supportive of their relationship. Also, they start playing a dating sim, because of course they do. Nazuna then mentions that it's almost 4 a.m. and they should probably sleep soon. As they casually talk about sleeping together, Akira freaks out about that. Then they say it's absolutely perfectly normal, and the three of them can just sleep together like that. Akira panics right after she lies down. There is a lot of panicking in this episode. And she then gets up and says she's just gonna go to school. Ko tells her that it's too dangerous to go alone, and Nazuna points out that it's raining, so she should just wait for it to stop. Nazuna starts to suck Ko's blood, and Akira gets embarrassed just witnessing it. She then asks about the whole thing between the two of them. They start to explain how Ko has quote, tasty blood, and is also eager for Nazuna to feed on him so that he can also become a vampire, whilst losing like 50% of his blood content at this point, let's be real. And he also explains the part about how he needs to fall in love with her first. Which makes Nazuna feel embarrassed because romantic things do that to her. Nazuna drags him to go back to sleep, but Akira still insists that they should just go. Nazuna tells her to stop worrying and just lie down until she falls asleep. Ko, meanwhile, apologizes to her for making things so awkward and that he just wanted to show her what he's doing at night so she doesn't worry anymore. Akira asks Ko if he's having fun with whatever's in his life right now, and he says it is. She then tells him to drop his arm so that he can relax and fall asleep. Ko then starts wondering about what Akira feels about him being a vampire, but she tells him that she doesn't mind as long as they stay friends. Akira eventually falls asleep and wakes up 4 hours later. She starts panicking again and preps for school. She tells Ko before Nazuna arrives and asks if she feels satisfied. Nazuna adds that people who are satisfied sleep better. Bruh. In the next episode, Nazuna wakes up early and starts finding ways to occupy herself in the meantime. She decides to take a bath in the bathhouse and asks the guy in there if her watch beeps. Once it does, Nazuna quickly leaves to meet up with Ko. Ko doesn't actually recognize her at first because her hair's down, and he gets surprised by her, telling her that he was taking a bath before arriving. He tells her that he wants to take a bath, and she offers to take him to the bathhouse. While in the bathhouse, Ko notes how relaxing it is, but it also makes him think about some different thoughts.
Uh-oh.
Even if he doesn't want to. He starts overthinking his feelings and asks Nazuna to suck his blood, hoping that he's finally feeling love for her. Jesus Christ, this boy literally knows nothing about humans. Ko feels tired afterwards and opts to rest in the first place he sees, which ends up being a love hotel, because of course it is. He gets flustered realizing it later on, and Nazuna teases him about it. She also asks him if he's figured out his feelings. He then says that he already sees Nazuna as a friend, so he doesn't really feel great about his goal to, quote, fall in love with her. Nazuna then says that she likes it when he's all confused with his feelings and provokes him because it makes his blood even tastier, apparently. They walk out on the street and Nazuna points out a drunk man that she drank the blood from.
Yeah.
She then reassures Ko that she's also drunk from women before. Nazuna then reveals that she works as a, quote, professional cuddler. I mean, if that was a job, I would want to do it too. She lets Ko pick a service and he picks out the massage packet. Ko gets flustered with the massage packet because it's just something else. And Nazuna points out the different pressure points in the body, especially the one on the neck, which helps a person sleep easier when triggered. Please show me where that one is. For the love of God, I need it. Nazuna starts to inch closer to Ko's neck, but the doorbell suddenly rings. She checks who it is and finds out that it's a customer. She then asks Ko to replace her for the customer just this one time, since she also wants the massage course. Ko opens the door and leads the customer, a woman with glasses, inside the room where he laid back down. He then goes to look for Nazuna and finds her playing video games. Nazuna tells him that the customer's name is Shirakawa and that she works in a publishing company. Ko just wants to let her leave, but Nazuna insists that Ko offer her some services, and it's Nazuna's only source of income.
Money!
And she hasn't worked in a month because of him. She then offers to give him half the cost of the service, plus a kiss, if he does cater to Shirakawa. And the episode ends there because, of course it does. The next episode focuses more on Shirakawa. Before arriving at Nazuna's apartment, she came from another night of eating out and drinking with her colleagues. She has grown tired of this and figured going to Nazuna for her services would help her relax. Instead, she finds this middle schooler who is now offering to cater to her.
Why you bullying me?
Nevertheless, Ko does a great job of massaging Shirakawa, and the two engage in some small talk. She's surprised to find out that he's supposed to be at school because she didn't work when she was his age. Shirakawa asks for his reasoning, and he simply says he needs the money.
Money!
And because it's also something he wants to do. He talks about how he stopped going to school and couldn't sleep, so he went for a walk one day, and he noticed then that the sky was way more awesome at night. And she then says that she gets that because she also had the same feeling 10 years ago when she was in middle school. She asks Ko why he left school, and he just answers that he got bored. My dude, what kind of reasoning? They also start to relate about being tired of their routine. As Ko got tired of being the model student, Shirakawa got tired of socializing with her bosses and co-workers for work. Her boss then calls as she starts to cry, so she excuses herself and tells Ko that she has to answer the call and leaves. She starts to ask Ko to leave the room so she can change, but Ko tells her that he won't let her leave and asks for Nazuna's help. Nazuna then throws her out the window. Shirakawa starts to panic, and honestly, who wouldn't?
LOL!
Ko then catches her in turn. Nazuna catches him, because that's very normal behavior. He apologizes for that, but says he couldn't just let her leave. He also tells her that she doesn't have to do things if she doesn't really want to. Shirakawa then starts to break down again at how her situation is different because she's an adult. She has to go to work and listen to her bosses, unlike Ko, who can just give up going to school. Ko then tells her that he wants to be a vampire because vampires don't have to be too rational. Shirakawa laughs at him, but she eventually thanks Ko for lifting off some of the pressure she feels at work. She also wishes him luck in his goal to be a vampire and wishes she could be one too. Ko then tells her that once he's a vampire, he'll turn her into one too. Doesn't that involve falling in love? And she's... After all that, Nazuna says that he was being pretty bold back then since he's still not sure he's gonna be a vampire, and he would also have to make her fall fall in love with him, which is just weird in general. And he then says that it'll be an easy task because he's, the quote, ladies' man. One night, after going back to Nazuna's apartment, she asks him to think of a fun activity to do. He suggests going skateboarding or to a karaoke bar, but Nazuna chooses to go to the nighttime pool, which is a thing apparently. Once there, Ko notes how different the vibe is at the nighttime pool. He calls it more grown up, I guess. Honestly, anything could be considered more grown up for him because he's literally 14, and I will not let any of you forget this. And his mind starts to wander, thinking about what Nazuna's swimsuit would look like. And speak of the devil, Nazuna arrives. She's wearing a shirt, and Ko points out how she should probably be wearing a swimsuit. She then bends down and shows her that she's wearing it under the shirt. Nazuna excuses herself and leaves to go get a drink, all while Ko panics how he finds the vampire really, really hot, even though she's showing less skin than usual now. Ko then hears two guys start to flirt with Nazuna as she's coming back. To his surprise, Nazuna plays along with them and even pretends not to know where her companion is. Eventually, Ko has had enough and he goes to approach them, dragging Nazuna away without a word. They leave the pool and Nazuna starts apologizing to Ko. She reasons that she just wanted to tease him, which is kind of mean, honestly. He then goes on to say that he felt somewhat jealous seeing other people trying to be friendly with her. Nazuna asks if he still wanted to swim, but doesn't really wait for an answer as she flies away with him and carries him to a pool, which he soon realizes was a school's. This is a bad idea. They land in the water and Nazuna teases him again before quickly apologizing for it. She starts to feed on him while he starts to have another internal crisis about his confusing feelings. While walking down the street, Shirakawa spots Ko and calls out to him.
Hey bitch, what's up bitch? Suck my dick.
She treats him to a can of soda and thanks him for saying that he'll turn her into a vampire if she ever needed it, which is a really weird need to have, but yeah, sure, go ahead. She leaves while Ko is still a bit surprised. It starts to rain and they take shelter under the bridge. Ko spots a woman being hit on by a guy. The woman starts approaching him and tells him that she noticed how he was looking at her just then. Yeah! They start to have a conversation and he learns that she usually goes out with guys just out of boredom. Which is kind of a dick move, but yeah, sure. Ko then asks her why she rejected the guy just now, and she says it's because he's not really her type. He then voices how he thinks that doesn't at all seem safe, and the woman teases that he doesn't sound very convincing, especially when he's staring at her, personality.
Oh my god!
She then takes his drink and walks away, which prompts Ko to follow after her.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
They walk to a secluded area where the woman expresses her woes about how life has gone too boring now. Ko relates to the woman and tells her that he understands her. She then hugs him and suddenly, oh my god, she's a vampire too.
Psych!
Luckily for Ko, Nazuna comes to save the day as she arrives, ripping the girl's arms off because that's a reasonable response. The woman puts it back right away and starts sparring with Nazuna just as another woman takes Ko and flies away. What is this tag team vampire woman kidnapping? He's then brought to some fancy rooftop where he meets other vampires. Miko Hirata, Midori Kawakobe, Hatsuka Suzushiro, and Honda Kabura. Miko seems to be the leader of the group and tells him that he can choose who will turn him into a vampire. His choices are within the group, plus the vampire he met earlier whose name is apparently Seri Kikyo, but Ko stays loyal to Nazuna. This confuses the vampires because apparently they're the cool girls and Nazuna's just the outcast. Apparently, they have this gimmick of trying to be popular so that they could attract more people and turn them into vampires. Nazuna doesn't do this because she's not really focused on expanding the vampire race.
Good meme.
Meanwhile, Seri thinks Nazuna's putting Ko in danger because it seems like she's just toying around with him. Nazuna then tells her that she does want to turn people into vampires and make them her offspring, and that includes Ko.
Oh shit, not good.
Back with Ko and the cool girls, it's Midori's turn with her "I'm interested in you" tactic. She sits beside him and asks if she was somewhat his type in all a really cutesy way, you know? And all of them get really surprised when he says no, because no one has ever done that apparently. Ko explains that it's because he still doesn't understand what his type actually is. The girls then remind him that they're doing him a favor by letting him choose who will turn him because if he refuses, they would just have to kill him.
Holy shit.
Because he knows too much about vampires. Ko then tells them that he does want to be a vampire and that's why he wants to fall in love with Nazuna.
You fucking with me, right?
Nasuna then arrives but freezes with a really red face as she gets embarrassed by his declaration. Honda then approaches Ko and loudly wonders about what makes Ko different. Ko then calmly explains the arrangement between him and Nasuna. Nasuna finds his blood super tasty and he wants to become a vampire.
Women.
He adds that Nasuna also told him that she doesn't care if he falls for her, which means that she's constantly sucking his blood.
And Shorty got the fatty. Shorty be catching moves. Every time I fuck without a rub.
And he can just turn into a vampire whenever he's fallen. The other vampires accept this. Ko then declares that he doesn't really care how long it will take as long as he becomes a vampire, shocking the others. By the next episode, they reveal that Ko only has a year after Nasuna first sucks his blood. Once that year is up, he can't turn into a vampire anymore. Nasuna forgot about this itty-bitty little rule, and she turns to him as the cool girls start drinking. Rewarding him for the Shirakawa's message with a kiss. He gets all flustered about it being done right in front of the other vampires. Nasuna flies off with Ko on her back and notices that he's deep in thought. He then tells her that he's happy that she was the first vampire he met. Ko then tells Akira about the 1-year deadline before realizing that after that, the cool girls may just kill him because he's still technically human. Akira arrives at school and bumps into her classmate Mahiru. He's surprised by her because he wasn't really expecting anyone to pass through that area. He explains that he was out with an older friend late at night and came back to school for something, eventually falling asleep there. Akira begins to see similarities between his situation and that of Ko's and hopes that Mahiru is also not seeing a vampire.
Are you sure about that?
Mahiru then mentions how Ko hasn't been coming to school anymore. He hopes that he, Akira, and Ko would all bond together soon, seeing as they were childhood friends. Ko sees Seri once again, and he's booking it. Seri reassures him that she's not gonna try and kill him. They hang out at the same place where they first met.
Fuck you, Spider-Man!
And Ko vents out how he's worried about that 1-year deadline he has and that he doesn't know how to fall in love with someone. Seri then advises Ko to take Nasuna out on a date and gives him a list of activities. Ko asks Nasuna out, but she's uninterested in playing a video game. Turns off her video game, forcing her to go to their first date spot, the cinema. While they're watching the movie, Nasuna gets irked at Ko for choosing a rom-com movie because it's making her all embarrassed. He apologizes and they leave the cinema to go out for a drink. Ko then asks her what she thought of the movie, but immediately takes it back. Then he starts panicking because Seri's advice isn't really working now, is it? Nasuna soon figures out that he's following what someone else told him.
Oh shit, not good.
She sees the list and just goes home. Ko gets really frustrated that things didn't really end well, and later that night, Nasuna appears outside his window and offers to take him out for a meal under the night sky. She then flies around with him and points out that he should just do what he always does because she found that fun. While walking down the street, Ko meets up with Mahiru. They go to the playground where Ko tells him that he's surprised he could still recognize him. Mahiru then explains that he just had this certain unmistakable vibe to him.
Why you bullying me?
And Ko narrates how being friends with Mahiru back then was so easy and how he was technically a perfect child and a perfect student. Akira soon appears and joins the two of them. She tells Mahiru about Ko's situation, although very vaguely.
Monkey!
Later on, Mahiru excuses himself because he has to meet up with someone. He then thanks Ko, which once again really surprises him. Meanwhile, Akira is once again reminded of how similar their situations just are. Meanwhile, Nasuna spots Mahiru with a woman as Ko calls out to her. She then asks for his hand and holds it, reasoning that she doesn't want him to go wandering off again. Even though Ko argues that it was just her suddenly disappearing that led to that.
Boring.
On another night, Seri hangs out on the streets again. She receives some text from a guy, which makes her think about turning him into a vampire.
This big brain time.
She then spots Ko before calling out to him and starting to approach him when Nasuna digs a knee into her face.
Oh my god!
Nasuna then reasons that Seri can't blame her for being protective of Ko. She also asks why Seri would want to mingle with Ko, given that her ideology is that vampires should be friendly with humans they don't intend to turn. Seri then says that she's just messing around. Ko chases after her and asks if she wanted to talk about anything because
He could sense something was wrong. Seri invites him to a karaoke bar where she just vents out how she's been dealing with clingy guys. She lightheartedly says that she can just off them if they get too much before trying to convince him to sing. Seri feels really bummed because Ko isn't really vibing with her. Because he's not really up to date with like trendy songs and all that, and honestly, same. Later on, a guy taps on the door of their booth from the outside. Ko starts to panic, but Seri is calm about it and says that it's just one of her fans. She calls them Dragos and says that they just want attention, calling out to the guy and watching him walk away. Ko tries to pry more into her situation, but she gets angry and repeats that she can just kill them if they annoy her too much. The guy then enters the room and wonders what they were arguing about. Seri then aims for the guy, but Ko immediately pushes him back and saves his life. She warns him that she won't hesitate to kill him too, and he responds by running away with Mr. Drago. They stop at an alleyway outside. Mr. Drago asks Ko about his relationship with Seri, and Ko reassures him that he's nothing, and when he protests, asks the question back. He then tells Ko of how he and Seri first met while he was drunk and miserable. He knew that Seri was just taking pity on him, but he didn't really mind. He also doesn't mind what his relationship with Seri is as long as he gets to see her more often. Seri arrives.
The fuck you doing here, n***?
And tells Ko to move aside because she's gonna kill Mr. Drago. The guy is still confused, and Seri explains how she's a vampire and they make people fall for them so that they can also turn them into vampires. Ko refuses to step aside, and Seri goes by her word, aiming for him this time. Nazuna arrives once again and restrains Seri, who promises she won't hurt Ko. Definitely not.
Why you always lying?
Nazuna then asks why she wants to kill Mr. Drago, and she starts interrogating her and pestering her until Mr. Drago just tells her to stop.
Stop right there, criminal scum!
He tries to defend Seri, saying that it wasn't her fault that he fell in love with her. He then reveals that they were friends back then. Seri then adds that she befriended Mr. Drago, whose real name is Akiyama, without really intending to turn him into a vampire. When Ko asks for her reason, Seri says that it's because she got tired of approaching humans just to make them fall in love. Akiyama was her first friend, but she didn't know how to be just friends yet. Seri then tells Nazuna to get off her back and assures her that she won't do anything anymore. She then tells Akiyama they should stop seeing each other.
Whoa! All right, buddy!
Ko then vents out to her that she's pretty hard-headed of a person and a serious pain to deal with, and that they should just properly talk it out as friends. He then repeats that they can't really be friends because vampires and humans just don't do that.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
She then starts crying and says that she doesn't really want to stop because it was fun for her. Akiyama then tells her that he also doesn't want it to end and asks her to turn him into a vampire. Ko watches as Seri bites into his arm while Nazuna teases him about it. The four of them then hang back at the karaoke bar where they celebrate Akiyama's new life as a vampire. Things are spicing up with Ko's journey to become a vampire. It takes a wild detour when he encounters something that makes him think, does he really want to become part of the vampire race?
Oh shit, not good.
While walking together one night, Nazuna and Ko pass by Midori, who's dressed up in a maid outfit. Midori then recruits Nazuna to sub in for someone who wasn't able to make it to work for that day. They go to the cafe where Nazuna gets dressed up as a maid. Yay! And she asks Ko what he plans to do next since she's gonna be busy, and if he'd also want to dress up as a maid, perhaps. I don't know if they have butlers at maid cafes, but like, okay. Midori then takes this opportunity to let Ko order anything he wants. So the shift starts and Ko takes a seat. Midori goes alongside with the roleplay pretty well, but Nazuna just kinda sucks at it.
Why are you gay?
Midori reprimands her enough for her to break out of character before reminding Nazuna that she's getting paid for this, so she should at least try to do well. Nazuna then starts trying her best at this whole maid thing, and you know, it's a good time, maybe. Ko asks how Midori became so good at being a maid, and she says that she really is just cute because of her being a vampire and stuff. She demonstrates this by serving another customer who is totally awestruck. Meanwhile, another maid named Arisa serves Ko a drink before introducing herself. Arisa also teaches Ko about the ways of the maid cafe, such as having to address Midori as Midori-chan and not Ko's usual Kohakube-san.
Okay.
She also tells Ko how Midori immediately became the #1 maid there after arriving, a spot that Arisa used to have. After the shift, Midori, Ko, and Nazuna hang out in the back rooms. Not those back rooms, the other back rooms.
Midori then receives some lewd pictures of Arisa, and she enlists Ko and Nazuna's help in finding out who was being a creep. The next night, Arisa arrives and catches Ko looking at the pictures. She then apologizes for troubling him about it. Ko then starts considering the possibility that the photos were taken outside before Arisa had to get changed for work. Ko quickly leaves and finds Nazuna to check out his theory, but it then seems like it's far-fetched now because the creep would either have to have some really good gymnastic skills in order to parkour up to the balcony, or some really good lockpicking skills to open the door outside. Ko then tries taking pictures from the balcony, although it doesn't really have the same vibe as the creep's photos. He then begins to have some sort of epiphany and comes up with a plan to catch the culprit.
Now that's a lot of damage!
He and Midori hide in a locker while Nazuna pretends to be going home, leaving Arisa alone in the room. They hear the window open and the two of them get out of the locker. Arisa is setting up her phone on a stand clamped to the window ledge. Ko immediately asks her why, but Arisa gets dressed first and asks how he was able to figure it out. He says that it was because the photos just looked that good. He also says that there weren't any upskirt photos, which is apparently what creeps like best. Midori then points out the reason is because Arisa's jealous that Midori got to the top spot. The whole "oh no, now I have a stalker" thing was just to give the impression that someone was still heavy simping for her. Arisa offers to quit, but Midori basically just brushes it off. Later on, Arisa sits beside Ko at the maid cafe as a customer. She expresses how she felt happy that something she liked doing, despite it being seemingly weird, was validated. She then takes a selfie with Ko, with Midori and Nazuna in the back, soon upgrades her stuff for her cuddle buddy business, and drags Ko to look for new customers. He soon finds a weird lady smoking by the bridge and invites him for a chat for a bit.
But not good.
The lady agrees, and they hang out at the cafe first. Ko quickly explains that he's not hitting on her and is just looking for customers for the cuddle buddy business. The lady then states that the law doesn't allow minors to work around these hours, which terrifies Ko. But she quickly just goes, "Lamau, JK, lighten up, buddy boy, it's fine." She then says that she's just encouraging misconduct, and that she's not out for having a cuddle buddy, though she might like a massage.
You what?
Ko asks her what her job is, and she gives him a business card, introducing herself as a private detective named Anko. She says she's usually in petty cases, like finding missing people. Anko then asks him if he knows a guy named Akihito Akiyama.
What the fuck?
AKA Akun. If you remember this is a dude who was fawning all over Sari and is now a vampire. Ha! He panics, and Anko probably got a hint because she pulled his arm and just stared directly into his eyes.
Oh shit.
She then apologized and paid for the bill before leaving, because Ko's probably a broke 14-year-old, let's face it, like I had 20 bucks when I was 4. Nazuna then gets frustrated about his failure in getting customers and instead just goes out to a cafe with a woman. He cheers her up with some booze instead. Ko soon meets up again with Akira and Mahiru at school. They break in and start ghost hunting because, yeah. They start at the girls' bathroom where some ghost apparently hangs out inside a stall. Akira goes in and knocks at the door and Mahiru pranks her by responding, which freaks her out at first. Then they move on to the other school mysteries, until Mahiru tells them one of the unsolved mysteries in their own school. Apparently, a teacher disappeared 10 years ago and his ghost still haunts the school to this day. They decide to go check out his classroom and are surprised to actually see him there, which, oh, geez. They then find out that the teacher is now a vampire and had been starving himself because he was tricked into becoming one and really didn't want to. His hunger overtakes him and he lunges at Akira.
Got him!
Mahiru immediately tries to save her while Ko freezes up because this was a different kind of vampire. He then gets back to his senses and slams a chair into the teacher, which thankfully knocks him out. Mahiru drags him far before he regains consciousness and just tells them to run. To Ko's surprise, Anko suddenly appears and lets the teacher drink her blood. He finds it disgusting though and immediately stops. Anko then starts comforting the teacher and assures him that he'll die a human, holding him down until the sun rises and he just turns to dust. Ko gets angry at how Anko had to kill him that way, as he was going to starve to death that day anyways. She then says that it would have been cruel to let him die as a monster and that Ko knows absolutely nothing about vampires.
God damn it!
This incident nags at Ko for a long while before he goes to see Nazuna. Since it's been a while, Nazuna is pretty hungry and this just reminds Ko of the teacher, making him push her back. She she quickly notices and demands that he tell her all about it. He tells her about the teacher and about the detective, and Nazuna invites him for a walk. Ko starts to feel better again and recognizes the fear he's feeling before letting Nazuna drink his blood again. Later on, Ko tags along with Mahiru, who eventually asks him why he wants to be a vampire in the first place. He can't understand why he'd still want to, especially after what happened at the school with the teacher. Ko then starts to question himself and realizes he's really confused about things. Mahiru gets agitated at him for not answering, but eventually calms down.
Anyway, so
Ko comes back to Nasuna's place and just hugs her. She then suggests that they hang out at his place, where no one's home since Ko's mom is apparently out at work. They then start discussing his hesitation at becoming a vampire. Ko says that it's because he's starting to realize that being one isn't just all sunshine and rainbows. And it doesn't really help that Nasuna tells him that being a vampire is actually super dull and she's just passing day by day. He gets frustrated and asks her why she just showed him all the good parts. She says that maybe it's because it's the way she wanted her vampire life to be. She tries to leave, but Ko attempts to stop her, ending with the both of them in a very compromising position. We'll say that. Nasuna then teases him by pretending to go in for a kiss.
Oh my.
But instead licking his neck before actually leaving. Later on, Ko meets with Anko. He asks her how much she knows about him, and she seems to know a lot. He then asks her why she's so against being a vampire, and it's basically because she thinks vampires are just toying with humans. She emphasizes how there's no guarantee that he's going to fall in love with Nazuna, who she name drops, and that if he fails to become a vampire, then other vampires would just kill him for knowing their existence. Anko then gives him a choice. Either he stays human and she kills the vampires for him so they don't go after him, or he turns into a vampire and he's just one more target for her. Ko then says that he can't agree with her going after vampires, so Anko reports him to the police, forcing him to run away and hide in the playground when he sees a police car nearby. He starts panicking about where to go next before Hatsuka finds him. She takes him to her place, where a bunch of other people are there.
What the
Ko figures out that there are potential offspring who are trying to show off to Hatsuka. She asks them to leave, much to their displeasure. Hatsuka then takes a bath and goes out to ask Ko to hand her a towel, where he finds out that Hatsuka is actually a guy. Meanwhile, Nasuna goes to the other vampires and tells them that Ko might not be a vampire anymore. Even so, she wants them to leave her alone, which makes Nico angry because that was not part of the plan. Ko tells Hatsuka that he's starting to doubt being a vampire after everything that's happened. Hatsuka then explains to him that vampires don't really know everything about themselves, so Nazuna might not really be keeping things from him. Hatsuka then tells Ko that Nazuna might be harshly punished if he doesn't get turned into a vampire. He then proposes that he be the one to turn Ko into one because it seems at this rate, he'll never be able to fall in love with Nazuna. Ko then says that he might not also fall in love with him, but Hatsuka brushes it off and says he could easily manipulate Ko into thinking he's in love with Hatsuka, which turns Ko off and he declines the offer, which honestly I don't really blame him.
You're a fucking idiot.
He leaves Hatsuka's apartment and goes to the rooftop where the other vampires are hanging out. Once there, Nico tells him that he's too late and that Nazuna had already left. She also tells him that Nazuna might not want to talk to him right now, which makes Ko overthink what exactly they did to her. He ignores that part and still goes to find her. Ko then remembers that the police are looking for him and encounters them by the bridge. He then jumps over the bridge and runs away, being reminded of Nazuna teaching him that the night is fun, right guys? Meanwhile, Nazuna is sulking as she feels like she tried to act cool in front of Ko to impress him. Ko then declares that he's gonna fall in love with her because he likes being with her during the night and all that stuff.
Simp.
Nazuna kisses him and says to herself that she'll work on becoming a vampire worth falling in love with, as her new agreement with the other vampires is just to have Ko fall in love with her. Anyway, have a good one, bye!